Welcome to another conversation from Peaks on Radio. I'm Chris. Today I'm talking with Tom Faux of the Faux and Fiestas family band. It's an ad hoc band made up of family friends dating back over 20 years to their time on Peaks Island. The band's performing at the 5th Main on July 7th from 7 to 8:30 p.m. Admission by donation of $20. In addition to being a talented musician, Tom is now a professor of musicology at Illinois State University in Urbana, Illinois. Let's start with the concert itself coming up at the 5th Main. Can you tell me a little bit about how you came to be coming out to Peaks Island for the concert on July 7th?
Okay, yeah. So my old friend Juan Fiestas and my old friends Juan Fiestas and Christine Fiestas got together with my wife, Robin, and my daughter Stella and I last summer and played some music. This is up in Western Maine in Freiburg. And it was just so fantastic. The music was so great that we made a pact then and there to do this concert on Peaks Island. I lived on Peaks Island during the 90s, I guess for about 12 or 13 years, at the same time that Juan and Christine also lived on the island. We all moved away in 2001. I moved to Urbana, Illinois, and Juan and Christine moved to Texas. And we've been in touch ever since. And Juan and I took a trip to Peru several years ago together. But in any case, we played in a band for years, and we played in a band when we were living on Peaks, and we thought that Peaks Island would be the perfect place to do this concert.
That's fantastic. And tell me about the collaboration with the 5th Main. Or did you choose the 5th Main for a reason? Did they reach out to you?
I think I called Ellen, or I sent a note to Ellen Mahoney, who I had heard was organizing concerts at the 5th Main. I played in the 5th Main many times over the years. I did contra dances there and concerts there and everything. I just, adore that building. I remember the night many years ago when the doors were open one summer night when Chris Moore and John McGann were playing a concert in the 5th Main. And I was out on the porch with my then 3-year-old daughter, and we were listening to the music, and the sound of the ocean was rolling in and all that. And I was walking around the big back porch with my daughter with her hand in mine. And she was kind of toddling along, and she looked up at me, and she let go of my hand, and she started walking by herself. And it was just this magical moment. And everybody who was sitting out on the porch listening to the music was sort of suddenly paying attention to this little 3-year-old girl who had just suddenly learned how to walk. And the music was rolling out, and it was just such a charming moment. And it's one of many charming moments that I've had at the 5th Main. So it's one of my favorite places to play.
That's fantastic. I'm really
long answer to a short question.
Yeah. I'm really glad to hear that. It definitely is a place that has many wonderful memories. And I think just the space itself creates opportunity for those moments like you talked about, for meaningful moments.
Oh, it's glorious. And it's a great place for music because of the wood floors and, I don't know, the shape of the room or something. Something kind of magical happens with sound in that room.
Agreed. So tell me a little bit about your band. What sort of music are you going to be playing at the 5th Main?
Yeah, well, Juan and Christine and I, for I guess about 8 years, toured around southern Maine mostly, but New England, with a group called Pacto Andino. And mainly we were playing the music of Juan's family, Juan's father and older brother, neither of whom are still with us, were both fantastic composers. In this kind of Peruvian, almost Andean style, but not quite. Just really beautiful, compelling melodies and beautiful music. So we toured around and played a lot of that music along with other South American music. And so when my daughters were growing up, they were learning that music. I mean, they've been playing it since they were old enough to pick up instruments. And my wife also learned it from me. And it's just, it's the music of Juan's life and the music of my life. And so it's really great to be playing with our kids, another generation, playing that music that they grew up with. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's super. So tell me a little bit, if you know the history, tell me a little bit more about Juan's family and their time as composers, were they well-known composers in Peru or in the United States?
Yeah, in the area, quite well known. Juan's father is a sort of renowned musician from Piura, which is in northern Peru, just close up in the northern desert area along the coast near the Ecuador border. He's a very interesting musician. He learned how to play instruments when he was in the army. Never a fantastic player, but an incredible teacher. And Juan and his brothers are all violinists, and his many of Juan's cousins are also violinists. They play in orchestras around the world, and all were trained by this guy, Juan's dad. So that's part of it. And so he was a fabulous teacher, and also composed these just amazingly compelling melodies, beautiful melodies, somewhat like the panpipe music that was so popular on every street corner for years, that music from the Andes, but not quite. Also sort of influences from more Spanish sounding music, waltzes and maraneras and other kind of Spanish dance forms. But it's kind of a unique combination. So it was Juan's dad who was the main composer, and Juan's brother Silverio was also a fabulous composer. And so it's unique. It's kind of hard to pinpoint. It has elements of indigenous music from the Andes, but also elements from Spain and other things, polkas and waltzes and these kind of late 19th century, early 20th century European dances. You just have to hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, the music that we're playing for the concert will be a lot of that kind of music. Mm-hmm. And also, my daughter and wife are both very accomplished violin players, as is Juan. And so, not only as violinists do they play this kind of music, but they also, they play a lot of other kinds of music. They're very, very educated musicians. So among other things, we'll be playing a lot of sort of old time American string band music. Mm-hmm. I play guitar. I'll play a steel string guitar, and I'll also bring a banjo. And we play a lot of interesting fiddle tunes, some from the Midwest, some from the South. And Juan also plays some of that stuff. And so actually we haven't had our rehearsal yet, so we don't really know exactly what we're going to play. But it'll be a wide variety of stuff, and string-based music. Juan's daughter is also a trumpet player, Ines, and so she'll join us on trumpet. And Juan's son is studying classical guitar, and I think he's going to be playing a piece that he composed for classical guitar. So it's a real kind of medicine show, variety show, and we'll just see what happens.
That sounds great. And I think variety, as you probably remember well, variety works well out on Peaks Island. I think there's a lot of interest for that kind of diverse music here.
Yeah. I think, some of for me, one of the most compelling things about this whole project is to be able to play with my family, with my daughter, who also grew up playing this music, and with Juan, a very old good friend, Juan and Christine, two old friends, and their kids too, to be able to just, have the next generation be playing this music and playing it so well. It's very gratifying to me.
Mm-hmm. Is this the first time that your families are all playing together, or have you been meeting up and playing in other venues as well?
No, this will be the first time. We played last summer on the front porch of this place where we were staying, and we'll have a rehearsal sometime over the next week, and then we'll play. So it's a roll of the dice. We'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm. That sounds very exciting. Tell me how you and your family are sort of talking about that, about this coming together of generations.
Well, we're all looking forward to it. I think for my family and my daughters, they sort of grew up hearing the stories about me playing with Pacto Andino, playing with Juan, and Christine and our friend Augusto, who's from Bolivia, and we had another musician, Lino Pareja, who was a percussion player. And my daughters grew up hearing the stories about us touring around and playing this music, and I think it sort of almost has mythical, mythical power for them. And as I say, from the time they were old enough to play instruments, my daughters were playing this music. So I think for them, it's part of their family music. It's very much part of my personal history, and it's deeply part of Juan's history and Christine's history. So it's music that's very meaningful to all of us, and so we're all just looking forward to playing it and playing it together. Mm. If that answers your question.
Absolutely, thank you. So, tell me a little bit about your time on Peaks. Maybe both families. Your time on Peaks. You said you lived here in the '90s. What was it like back then for folks who have moved here since then?
Well, I think when I was there, it was sort of the the end of Peaks Island being essentially, a fishing community and artist community, and it was, I guess everybody who has ever lived on Peaks Island sort of measures change from when they were there, but it seems to me that there was a turning point, and I think near the end of the time that I was there, the big ferry, the ferry landing, the big ferry landing was put in, and the big ferries started coming in, and it sort of Peaks Island took on more of a cosmopolitan feel, and maybe less of a local vibe. Mm. I don't know. It's hard to say. That's just my own weird impression.
Mm-hmm. I can understand that. So for folks, so there still definitely is a artist culture out here. For folks who are into the arts out here and who are trying to find their way out here, do you have any sort of advice about connecting with the artist culture?
No, I don't really have any advice for any other artists. I mean, I loved living out there. I love the ocean, and I always felt like the ocean just kind of fed me. It was never the same way twice. Taking the ferry on and off the island, the ocean never looked the same, and I just always felt like it was a sort of well of power of the earth, and that, I don't know. That's getting a little sort of romantic, but I always, I don't know. I just felt empowered by the ocean and the changing weather and just I don't know. I'm just rattling on here. It's hard to put into words, but I loved living on the island, and I felt like it was good for my musicianship, and it's a good place for artists.
Terrific. So, as a kind of as a follow up to that, you had said that you had lived on the island and then you had left for Illinois. Can you describe a little bit what that change was like for you and why you had left for Illinois?
Yeah. So I had done a master's degree at Tufts University while I was living on the island, in ethnomusicology, which is the study of music and culture and, how we identify ourselves with our music. And I moved out to Urbana, Illinois to do a PhD in that field in ethnomusicology. And that was the same time that Juan and Christine moved to Texas. Christine also to go to graduate school, and then Juan eventually to go to grad school. I chose Urbana, Illinois, partly because having grown up in Maine, grown up in kind of peripheral communities in Maine, first up in Whitefield in central Maine, and then in Portland, then the island. The middle of the country seemed exotic to me. The idea of moving to the Midwest just seemed so bizarre and strange that, among other things, that was one of my reasons for choosing the University of Illinois. So I moved out there and went to the University of Illinois, and I still live there. My wife and I have founded a community music school in Urbana. And I also teach at Illinois State University.
That's great. I want to hear about all of those things, but before I do, I want to hear about your rationale behind picking ethnomusicology. Was it because of your experience here with your friend Juan and learning about
Uh,
indigenous music in that way, or did you have a different interest?
yeah, I think. Well, I went to USM and got a degree in classical guitar. And I remember near the end of the time that I was there, okay, so I've learned how to play guitar pretty well, and but so do 10 zillion other people know how to do that. And I was talking to a professor of mine, and I said, one of the things that I like playing. I'm a musician at heart, and I like playing, but I also really love what music does for people. How it pulls people together, and I think a lot about that. And we never really touched on that in my undergrad. And he said, there's a field of study that studies precisely that, the study of ethnomusicology, and that started the wheels rolling. And I guess it was that conversation among other things that sent me back to school. But also, I mean, I grew up playing fiddle tunes in accompanying friends who played in fiddle contests. I love playing with the older French musicians in Central Maine and at the fiddle contests. And I've played a lot of different things, and I've always just really loved the way playing music puts people into the zone. No matter what kind of music they play, no matter who they are, we play music to go into the zone, and that I find that very interesting. So it was kind of that interest that, in addition to the conversation that I had with my professor, that sent me back to grad school.
Mm-hmm.
I was also working as a house painter and a carpenter, and I got tired of walking around on rafters in February and May, so that also sent me back to school.
Good reason.
Yeah.
And so I'm interested in your studies and then in your career since then. Do you have any thoughts about what it is about music that brings people together in that way? Is there any sort of insight that you can share about that?
Yeah, I do. So, I mean, this is sort of one of my lectures to my students at Illinois State. The oldest instrument that we know about is about 43,000 years old. Right, it's a flute that was dug up in some cave in Germany in the I don't know 2006, I think. It's made out of a buzzard leg bone, and the flute can play a 5 note scale, something called a pentatonic scale. And it turns out that this scale is common to music everywhere. I mean, I have played and studied music from Indonesia, indigenous American music, African music, and just everywhere the same 5 note scale appears. Now, 43,000 years is a long time, man. I mean, the same 5 notes. It's like some app has been running in the background of human beings since that time. I mean, 43,000 years ago was Paleolithic. Right? So all of this means that human beings have been playing somewhat sophisticated music. I mean, a 5 note scale that you could play on a flute uh, for as long as we've been human beings, we've been playing this music. If you think that the first, knuckle dragging musicians the first knuckle dragging musicians were people who picked up a log and whacked on another log and went, "Oh, music, good." It wasn't like that at all. Music was formed fully in the human mind. It came around. It came out about the same time that language did. We don't know whether language or music came first. So it's part of our birthright, right? 43,000 years we've been playing the same 5 notes. So you don't do something like that for that long a period of time unless there's a real reason for it. And I think human beings have been doing that for all that length of time, mainly to pull us together, to get us into the groove with each other. Music is all about getting into the groove. I mean, yeah, we like to think that we practice our instrument alone, and we've got this romantic image of the musician, as a solo artist and all this. But I think really at heart, music is about playing together. It's about people finding the rhythm with each other. When we listen to musicians who are not in the groove with each other, who are not in the pocket, we don't like it. It's like watching sports teams that are dropping the ball all the time. We watch and we watch and we watch. We can't take our eyes away. We go to the symphony orchestra and we like to see all of the bows moving in the same direction. Music is really about teaching us how to bond with each other as people. And if we don't bond together, then we're going to die. I mean, we're not herd animals like buffalo or like bees or something, but we are group animals. I mean, we do need to rely on each other. And I think if there's a if there's an evolutionary survival function of music, it's simply that. It's just to teach us how to be in the groove with each other. Because if we don't, we'll die.
That's amazing. Do you think that that's true of music no matter the genre? Like some people probably identify, well, never mind, probably. Some people do identify as like rock people or some people identify as hip hop people. Do you think those distinctions matter?
I think it's a lot like language that way. It's a universal. There is no society that I've ever heard of, and it's kind of my job to study this stuff. There's no society anywhere ever. There's no society right now that doesn't have music. There's none that ever existed that doesn't have music. But we all do it differently, right? Obviously, I mean, the music that I carry around on my phone is different from the music that my brother carries around on his phone. I mean, we all have our preferences. Music gets insanely sophisticated, insanely complicated, just like language. People everywhere speak different languages, but the universal is that we all speak. And I think music is that way.
Wow. That's fascinating. And so
yeah,
I think we could have a whole separate show on that topic.
Yeah, just point me in the right direction and give me a microphone.
Yeah, exactly. Do you find that when you are playing music, maybe with the Fiestas, right, out here on Peaks Island, or with other bands or other sort of ad hoc, groups that you are a part of, do you feel that once the music starts that there is a stronger or maybe just a different type of connection that you have with people that you're playing with versus people that you meet, like you and I speaking on the phone? Like, is there something qualitatively different about the connection that you have because of that playing together?
Yes, there is some deep recognition, and this is true. Even I mean, in my life, I've played a lot of music with people whose language I don't understand. People with whom I can't really communicate verbally very well, and yet when we play, there's just this this bang, this deep connection, and I think part of it is there's a kind of a, I don't know, there are technical aspects. Sometimes you're playing with somebody and you just go, wow, I can play with this person. This is fantastic. No matter who they are, like we suddenly have the same vocabulary somehow. So I think there's a technical aspect to that, and our learning might be the same, but there's also a willingness to go into the zone. You start playing with somebody, and the best musical experiences are with people who are just willing to go into the zone with you, to go, have what the psychologists call a flow experience, where you just forget about time passing, forget about whether you're having a bad hair day. You're just totally in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what that's what you're all about, you and the other person that you're playing with. And sometimes, just like in life, sometimes you're with somebody and you're both willing to go there, both willing to go into the zone.
Yeah, that's it, right. That sounds an awful lot like, developing a strong connection with somebody in different ways, like conversation, that kind of thing. But it also strikes me that it sounds a little bit like meditation. Do you, when you're playing, do you think that you feel the same sort of present centeredness? And then conversely, I don't know if this has ever happened in your life, but if you go a stretch without playing an instrument or playing with people, do you feel sort of a withdrawal or negative impact of not having played?
I don't know that I've ever gone for very long without it. I mean, in my own personal music world, I play classical guitar. I don't perform it. I was a classical guitar major in college. And I practice in the morning. It's part of my discipline, and it really doesn't have to do with anybody else. It doesn't have to do with with communication or performance or anything like that. It's just, I guess, it's as close to kind of a meditation practice as I have. It's just sort of an ongoing daily discipline. And I certainly miss it if I don't do it. If I'm away from the guitar for a while, I feel that I miss it. So I guess in that way, I'm not a meditator, but I think it's probably pretty close to that.
Okay, so we talked, I think, a little bit about your work at the university by virtue of this conversation, but you had mentioned that you and your wife had founded a music school for kids, and I'm hoping that you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a community music school. It's not necessarily for kids. I mean, kids are a large part of it, but we teach people from of all ages. I run a group. I direct a 25 member ensemble of people who are largely retired or a lot of older professors from the university, and no kids for sure. So it's a wide age range. It's a community music school, so we don't offer a degree. We've got 25 teachers working for us, and it's largely private lessons, but we also offer ensembles. When I was in music school years ago, uh, I was told that I needed to join ensembles to make myself a better musician. In other words, the end goal was to become a better musician, and playing in an ensemble was just a way of doing that. At our school, the Community Center for the Arts in Urbana, we sort of reverse that. Our assumption is, and this comes out of my ethno study and all this. Our assumption is that people at heart, whether they know it or not, want to be able to play with each other. And so we believe that people study their instrument, they study their violin or their piano or their accordion, whatever, in order ultimately to play with other people. So we try to direct people into ensembles. We really feel like playing together is kind of the end goal. That's the most important thing, getting into the groove with each other. If that makes sense.
It does. Yeah, that's great. So as somebody who has young kids, so I'll ask somewhat selfishly, but I think also for other people who are in that situation, kids, I think, show a natural interest in music. Mine certainly do. And my wife and I both play some instruments. Do you have any recommendations on sort of introducing that concept of all playing together with children?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of technical advice, and we could sit down and do that. But I think the main thing is that at heart, children, I mean, all of the non-musical people have been weeded out, evolutionarily, got weeded out a long time ago. We are a musical species, and that includes kids. Kids love music. They're pulled to it. They're drawn to it. And so, if they learn how to create it themselves and are encouraged and, don't have it scared out of them or, intimidated out of them or anything like that. If they're just, encouraged and pulled along and allowed to do what they would normally do, then they'll become musicians. I think it's inherent. It's part of our human heritage.
That's great. Yeah, I again, drawing from personal experience, I remember my grandmothers, both of them were taught to play piano. One had a really good teacher and the other one had a teacher that made it seem like drudgery. And you can guess which grandmother kept playing and which one didn't.
Sure. Sure. I mean, and it's easy, it's a human thing, and it's easy to scare music out of kids. And I think we all know people who, whose parents were so overbearing with their music instruction that, they lost interest or they had it frightened out of them, which is terrible.
Yeah.
And I think, when we look around and see, I mean, I teach these huge lectures, right? I've got 300, 400 students in a lecture hall, 8:00 in the morning, they're gen ed courses. And, a lot of these students walk in on the first day and they're terrified. they think, well, I don't really know anything about music. And, musicians are the people who get paid for it. Musicians are the people who I, have MP3s of on my phone. Like, we've turned it over to the professionals. And part of my semester-long project is letting these gen ed students understand that they are inherently musicians. They just are. By being a human being in 2023, you are a musician. Again, the unmusical ones were weeded out a long time ago. And so I think, when you're educating kids, it's important to remember that we're all musicians, and that really you're just sort of unlocking that natural inclination that they have.
Terrific. Do you have any, again, non-technical tips about how to sort of gently help kids in that way?
Kids like being in the groove. They like being in the groove with their parents and with each other. And if you can set things up that make them feel like they're in the groove, in the pocket with each other, that's the most satisfying experience.
All right. So I think that covers what I would hope to cover, and some, which is fantastic. Anything that you want to share with folks on the island ahead of your concert that we didn't talk about?
No, just that I'm really, really looking forward to being on the island and seeing old friends and playing in that glorious space. And just looking forward to playing with my friends and family and seeing what'll happen.
That sounds terrific. We're really looking forward to you coming out and looking forward to seeing you on the 7th.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
I look forward to meeting you.
Great. Yes, I'm here. Thanks. Thanks for listening to this conversation with Tom Faux. For more Island Conversations, check out peaksislandradio.com or search for Peaks Island Radio in your favorite podcast player. If you want to make sure you never miss an episode, sign up for our newsletter at peaksislandradio.com/newsletter, and you'll get a notification in your email every time we release a new conversation.